As I said earlier in my remarks, we did not recognize the Maduro regime because we believed the rules had not been respected. And furthermore, this was also confirmed by the United Nations in the report on the most recent elections. Presidential elections in Venezuela. Secondly, illegitimacy cannot be answered with illegality under international law, which is what has happened in recent days. In Caracas, we find ourselves at a decisive moment for European security, and therefore also for the stability of the rules-based international order. A moment of uncertainty, without a doubt. In recent days and hours, the media have been reporting on some aspects of this uncertainty in the international order, but it is also a moment of hope, a moment of opportunity. And that is also what I would like to emphasize today in this appearance. Why? For the first time in a long while, since Putin's invasion of Ukraine began 4 years ago, for the first time, a security framework is beginning to take shape. A security framework that could eventually allow the war to end and therefore achieve a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. It is true that we are close to that agreement, as I mentioned earlier, within the coalition of volunteers, the United States, the European countries, and also Ukraine, while logically waiting for that proposal to materialize, to take shape, and therefore to later be debated and eventually agreed upon with Russia as well in order to achieve that peace. But yes, I would like to highlight 3 fundamental aspects. These have been discussed today, and I believe we have been able to make substantial progress on them. The first of these is that at the moment, and I want to emphasize this, at the moment that a ceasefire is agreed upon. And therefore, when a lasting peace truly begins and the devastating war between Russia and Ukraine finally comes to a complete and definitive end, a comprehensive framework will certainly have to be carefully established for the future of the region and its people. Security guarantees in Ukraine, where the coalition of volunteers from these 35 countries will have to step up and therefore participate actively. We are therefore beginning to have a concrete plan for how to organize and implement these guarantees. Ultimately, about how to protect civil protection, which is currently under attack in Ukraine, to prevent new conflicts and therefore to consolidate peace and once and for all bring this war to an end. Today we have been able to discuss this plan for security guarantees and also confirm the willingness, both from the United States and from all European allies and beyond Europe, to implement this framework of security guarantees. And in this context, I am convinced that Spain must be part of this effort. The third aspect for peace that we discussed today is the reconstruction of Ukraine. That is why both the European Union, the member states of the European Union, and beyond the European Union, as well as other countries, including the Americans, are ready to launch what has come to be called a prosperity package for Ukraine, which will include aid, loans, incentives, and support mechanisms to rebuild its infrastructure and also to revitalize its economy. And that continues to believe that the international order must be based on rules. Therefore, the international order should be founded on the observance of fair rules and not on the law of the jungle. And this can, of course, be applied to Ukraine, which has been the subject of today's meeting, but also, logically, to others. Thank you. And that is why we are also greatly concerned about the events taking place in other parts of the world, such as in Venezuela. As you know, from the very beginning, the government of Spain never recognized the Maduro government because it broke the rules, because its election was illegitimate. And precisely for that reason, it also cannot recognize the legitimacy of the law, of a military action that is clearly illegal, that violates international law, and whose only apparent objective is to change the government of another country in order to seize its natural resources. The operation in Caracas sets a terrible and very dangerous precedent, a precedent that incidentally reminds us of past acts of aggression. And it pushes the world toward a future of uncertainty and insecurity, like the one we already suffered after other invasions driven by a thirst for oil. Nor can we accept that the territorial integrity of a European state, such as the sovereign nation of Denmark, is gravely and explicitly threatened in any way in this current climate, which is a fundamental principle. We cannot accept it, and we will not do so as a country, as a government. We will not remain silent in the face of violations of international law that, unfortunately, are becoming increasingly frequent. Indeed, I am going to meet with the majority of the parliamentary groups in the chamber starting next Monday. And indeed, I will do so to inform about the substantive progress that has been made in the work that all the member states of this coalition of volunteers have been developing at a technical level for over a year. I think it is very important to remember several points about these 4 years of war. First, that we are facing an opportunity. And therefore, there is an open door to hope that the year 2026 will be the year that puts an end to this war in Ukraine. Therefore, in line with this, Spain, a great European country, is prepared to say yes to participating if a ceasefire takes place. And thus, the opportunity arises to consolidate peace and to definitively end the war on the Eastern Front, in this case in Ukraine, by participating in these 2 areas. 1, reconstruction, economic resources through the European Union and also those we can provide bilaterally. And 2, by contributing to those security guarantees. The security guarantees are still to be defined. And regarding Venezuela, yes. I can confirm that, as President of the government, my intention is clearly to maintain unity both with the Venezuelan opposition, in this case with the leader of the Venezuelan opposition, Edmundo González, who, by the way, lives in Spain, as well as with the current President, Delcy Rodríguez of Venezuela. I believe that Spain can play a mediating role, contributing to a transition that results in clean, free elections, where the Venezuelan people can vote freely and decide their own future. As I said earlier in my remarks, we did not recognize the Maduro regime because we believed the rules had not been respected. And furthermore, this was also confirmed by the United Nations in the report on the most recent elections. Presidential elections in Venezuela. Secondly, illegitimacy cannot be answered with illegality under international law, which is what has happened in recent days. In Caracas,